Good morning, everyone. Let's begin with your doubts. Let's begin with solving your doubts. So please post your doubts. Okay, since you have no doubts, let's begin. Let's continue with practice question 3. Come to practice question 3. Okay, so I have one doubt which says, please explain the concept of one entity is both business and geographical segment. So one entity may have its operations in two different cities and it may be operating in a different manner in two different cities. In that case, what will happen is it is a business segment, but it is also a geographical segment, right? Which means one business can be a business segment and a geographical segment also. Then you have to find out which is the more dominating segment. If the segment which has more profitability, which is known as the more dominating segment. Now that dominating segment will be called as the primary segment, and the other one will be called as the secondary segment, right? So primary segment, more disclosures are required. Secondary segment, lesser disclosures are required, right? That is your concept of one entity being both business and geographical segment. I have another doubt which says additional condition not fulfilled, then segment disclosure required or not. Okay, so Akshay, just wait till I finish the standard. The moment I do the last question, you will understand what is the treatment that is to be given when additional condition is not getting satisfied. So I will explain that to you later. So just wait. We have a separate question where this additional condition is not getting satisfied. That is the time when we will have a proper look at it. Okay, any more doubts? Any further doubts? Okay, fine. If you are through till here, let's do practice question 3. Mark practice question 3, important last day revision question. Mark practice question 3, important last day revision question. Okay, let's go to practice question 3 if you're clear with everything. Practice question 3 says, from the following information, identify the reportable segments. करना क्या है? You have to identify the reportable segments. कितने segment दिए हुए हैं? 5 segment. Steel, farm automobiles, apparel, skincare and pharmacy. कितने segment है? 5. Steel, automobile, apparel, fashion, skincare and pharmacy. क्या क्या दिया हुआ? You have external sales of 100, 125, 80, 25 and 12. You have inter-segment sales of 10, 3, 2 and 5. You have segment result 40 profit, 18 loss, 12 profit, 5 loss and 150 profit. You have segment asset, very important, underline that, including DTA. मतलब जो नीचे DTA दिया हुआ है वो ऊपर वाले segment asset में already included है. What's your segment asset? 320, 290, 180, 90 and 85. DTA कितना दिया हुआ है? 15, 40, 20, 10 and 2. करना क्या? You have to identify the reportable segment. Put your first statement. As per accounting standard 17, segment reporting. Identification of reportable segments. Prepare a proper format. You have 5 segments. Let's prepare that. The first segment that you have is steel, then automobile, apparel fashion, then you have skincare and pharmacy. And of course, to mention that we will begin with based on segment revenue. Based on segment revenue. Let's begin. External sales. How much external sales do you have? 100, 125, 80, 25 and 12. So 100, 85, 125, sorry, 80, 25 and 12. Also take the total over here. Then we go to inter-segment sales. Inter-segment sales in the question is nil, 10, 3, 2, 5. So we have nil, 10, 3, 2 and 5. What's the total? 100 plus 125 is 225 plus 25 is 250. 250 plus 80 and plus 12 will come to 342. We'll come to 342. Your total of inter-segment sales will come to 20. After this, get your totals. You have 100, 135, 83, 27, 17, and this will be 362. Prepare this properly. Then we proceed. Okay, let's continue. You have 362 into 10%. We come to 36.2. Let's begin. Now you will give the answer to all these. Tell me, is separate disclosure required for steel? Is separate disclosure required for steel? Of course, separate disclosure is required for steel. Why? Because your 10% criteria gets you 36.2. But how much do you have? 100. So since it exceeds 10%, separate disclosures are required. Yes. Very good. Chalo. Let's proceed to the next one. Is separate disclosure required for automobile? What about automobile? Is separate disclosure required for automobile? Yes, of course, because 36.2 is your 10% criteria, but you get how much? 135. So, of course, it exceeds 10%. You need separate disclosures over here. What about apparel fashion? What about apparel fashion? Are separate disclosures required for apparel fashion? Yes, you need separate disclosures for apparel fashion as well. Come to the next one. What about skincare? Do you need separate disclosures for skincare? Do you need separate disclosures for skincare? Of course not, because your 10% comes to 36.2, but your skincare segment's total revenue is 27, so no disclosures required. Come to the next one. What about pharmacy? What about pharmacy? Are separate disclosures required for pharmacy? Again, no. Your 10% criteria asks for 36.2, but you have only 17, so no disclosures required. Fine. So reportable segments are as per revenue. They are which are the reportable segments as per revenue? Which are your reportable segments as per revenue? You have steel, automobile, and apparel fashion. Steel, automobile, and apparel fashion. Based on segment result. Let's go to the next one. Based on segment result. What's your segment result given in the question? Let's check that. What's your segment result? Your segment result has 40 ka profit, 18 ka loss. So you have for steel profit of 40, for automobile loss of 18, for apparel fashion you have a gain of 12 but loss of 5 in skincare. So you have 12 minus 5, and for pharmacy you have 150. You do not need the total, so leave it over here. I hope you all are solving this question along with me. You do have a notebook and you are preparing proper formats and solving it properly. Right? Please do that. Let's find out which are our segments in profit. My segments in profit are steel, fashion apparel, and pharmacy. The total of which in profit will come to 150 plus 40 is 190. So you get 202. You get 202. Your segments in loss. Your segments in loss are automobile and skincare. Their total in loss will come to 23. So 18 plus 5 will be 23. Your segments in profit is 202. Your total segments in loss is 23. Now my question to you is, which one will you select? 22, or sorry, 202 or 23? Which one will you select? in profits or loss, which one will you select? In profit or loss, you will select higher of the two, which comes to 202. Then we take 202 into 10%, which will be what? 20.2. So our criteria now is 20.2. Okay, tell me, does steel require separate disclosure? What about steel? Does it require separate disclosures? What about steel? Does it require separate disclosures? Yes, of course. So steel does require separate disclosures. What about automobile? Does automobile require separate disclosures? What about automobile? Of course, automobile does not require separate disclosures because your 10% criteria is 20.2. However, automobile has a loss just of 18. So since it does not fulfill the 10% criteria, separate disclosures are not required. What about apparel fashion? What about apparel fashion? Again, your 10% criteria is 20.2, but the apparel fashion has only a gain of or a profit of 12. So again, no disclosures required. What about skincare? What about skincare? Again, no disclosures required because it does not fulfill the 10% criteria. And finally, you have pharmacy. What about pharmacy? Are separate disclosures required for pharmacy? Of course, yes. So you need separate disclosures for pharmacy. Finally, what are your reportable segments? Your reportable segments are steel and pharmacy. Your reportable segments are steel and pharmacy. If you're done with this, come to the next one. And the next one is based on segment asset. Based on segment asset. So I have a doubt which says, are we supposed to show the working to get 10% as a working note? Yes, it's not required as a working note. You can show just the way I have shown over here. So no need to show it. Sorry. No need to show it separately as a working note. You can show it the way I have showed to you just before the table that you are preparing. Right? I hope that solves your doubt. Let's come to the last part, segment asset. And let us check the segment assets given in the question. It says the segment assets are 320, 290, 180. Let's put that 320, 290, 180, 90 and 85. 90 and 85. What about DTA? You have 15, 40, 20, 15, 40, 20, 10 and 2. Your total will be 905. Your total will be 905 for your segment assets. And your total for DTA will be 87. That will come to 87. Three 20, 290, 180. I'm sorry, this is 90. And then you have 85. Sorry, I just made a mistake in writing the assets. So your correct value for segment asset for steel is 320, for automobile is 290, for apparel is 180, for skincare is 90, for pharmacy is 85. So the total of your segment assets comes to 965, in which DTA included above is 15 for steel, 40 for automobile, 20 for apparel fashion, skincare 10, pharmacy 2. The total comes to 87. Your total is 878. After deducting, your total is 878. After deducting the DTA included. Fine, let's get the 10% criteria. You have 878 multiplied by 10%. You get how much? 87.8. First question to you is, does steel require separate disclosure? My first question to you is, does steel require separate disclosure? What do you say? Does steel require separate disclosure? Are separate disclosures required for steel? you will have to deduct DTA from the segment assets. After deducting DTA, you get 305 for steel, 250 for automobile, 160 for apparel fashion, 80 for skincare, and 83 for pharmacy. After that, from 965, you deduct the DTA included. You get how much? 878. 10% of 878 comes to 87.8. Tell me, are separate disclosures required for steel? Do you need separate disclosures for steel? Yes, of course, you will need separate disclosures for steel because the total of steel is 305. However, you need how much? 87.8. So separate disclosures are required for steel. What about automobile? What about automobile? Are separate disclosures required? So the total 10% criteria requires 87.8. However, you have a total of 250. So of course, separate disclosures are required. What about apparel fashion? Are separate disclosures required for apparel fashion? Of course, 87.8 is your criteria, but you have 160. So separate disclosures are required for apparel fashion. What about skincare? Are separate disclosures required for skincare? No, you have 87.8. However, your total is only 80, so it does not meet the 10% criteria. No disclosures required. Finally, what about pharmacy? Again, no disclosures required because it does not satisfy the 10% criteria. Let's see which are your reportable segments. You have steel, of course, there. Then you have automobile and you have apparel fashion. So these are your segments that are reportable based on segment asset. Okay, let's try to satisfy the first condition. The first condition says that even if a segment does not satisfy the 10% criteria, but if the management wants to give separate disclosures, they can give separate disclosures. Now, if you look at the question, please look at the question and tell me, is any such point given in the question? Have the management said that, okay, one segment is not requiring disclosures, but we want to voluntarily give disclosures? ऐसा कोई भी पॉइंट क्वेश्चन में दिया है जहां पे वो कह रहे हैं कि ये सेगमेंट हम voluntarily disclose करना चाहते हैं? Look at the question. You have the question. Look at the question and tell me, is there any point or is there any statement in the question which is asking you or telling you कि ये segment को voluntarily disclosure देना है? There is no such point in the question. So additional condition 1. So additional condition 1 is not applicable. Additional condition 1 not applicable. Let's go to the second additional condition. You have the second additional condition over here, which says at least 75% of total external sales. Let's go stepwise. ये रहा मेरा external sales इस question का. Comes to what? 342. At least 75%, which means 342 multiply by 75 percentage comes to 256.5. वो क्या बोल रहे हैं? एटलीस्ट 75% ऑफ एक्सटर्नल सेल्स. देखो मैं फिर से पढ़ रहा हूँ. ये रहा एटलीस्ट 75% ऑफ एक्सटर्नल सेल्स का 75% of all the segments should belong to reportable segments. If it does not, then additional segment should be disclosed as per the choice of the management, even if it does not fulfill the 10% criteria. Right? Let's see how do you try and understand this. Your 10% of external sales in the question comes to 256.5. Now let's find out our final answer. Final answer, reportable segments. If you look at segment revenue, your reportable segments are steel, automobile, apparel, fashion. Steel, automobile, apparel, fashion. If you look at the next one, you have steel and pharmacy. So over here, I will have to add pharmacy. After that, you have steel, automobile, apparel, fashion, steel and pharmacy, and then you have steel, automobile, apparel, fashion. So all the segments written over here are your reportable segments, which means we are not separately reporting skincare. Apart from skincare, all segments require separate reporting. Let's look at the revenue now. Now, please pay attention. It says at least 75% of the external sales should be reportable by all the segments. See that this is what they've given. At least 75% of the total external sales of all the segments should belong to reportable segments. If it does not, so then additional condition should be, then additional segment should be identified as per the choice of the management, even if it does not satisfy the 10% criteria. Okay, let's check what is your total of all these segments. So you have 100 plus 135 plus 83. So I'm writing over here 100 plus 135 plus 83 plus 17. You get how much? 335. Does it exceed 256? My question to you is, does 335 exceed 256.5? Does 335 exceed 256.5? It exceeds, right? Which means this condition is getting satisfied. Now this condition, since this condition is getting satisfied, again additional condition 2 is not applicable. Are you understanding this? Have you understood this clearly? If you have not, please post your doubts. I hope you're clear with this. Right, please let me know. Are you clear with this? I'm repeating both the conditions for you. Please pay attention. It says the first additional condition says that even if a segment does not fulfill the above mentioned 10% criteria, but the management still can provide voluntary separate disclosures if such disclosure will improve the understanding of the financial statement. हमारे क्वेश्चन में ऐसा कुछ उन्होंने नहीं दिया था कि एडिशनल हमको एडिशनल सेगमेंट रिपोर्ट करना है, क्योंकि उन्होंने कोई भी पॉइंट ऐसा नहीं दिया था. दिस कंडीशन वाज नॉट एप्लीकेबल टू अस. The second condition says that at least 75% of the total external sales of all the segments should belong to reportable segments. If it is not so, then additional segment should be identified. Now let's solve it. Now this time understand, I'm taking only the external sales because they've asked me to take only external sales, which means I need 75% of 100, 125, 342 is my total external sales. Multiply that by 75%. You get 256.5. Right? I'm repeating the additional condition. Please pay attention. 256.5. Because it is of external sales, I would recommend let's take only external sales. For external sales, you have 100 plus 125 plus 80 plus 12. You get how much? 317. Does 317 exceed 256.5? Yes. The answer is yes. That means the 75% additional condition is also getting satisfied. Because your 75% additional condition is also getting satisfied, no more disclosures are required. We are satisfying the second additional condition as well. Right? Please tell me, are you clear with this? Only then I can proceed to the next question. Are you clear with this? So that we can proceed to the next question. Okay. So there is one question which says, why are we including pharmacy? Because look at this point. I think it is Aman who is asking this question. Look at this point. These are your reportable segments. Do not only look at the reportable segments as per revenue. You will look at all reportable segments. You will look at all reportable segments. So in the all reportable segments, you have pharmacy. So you will have to include pharmacy as well. Are you getting it? Okay, if you're clear with this, let's go to the next question, which is practice question 4. Practice question 4. From the following information, identify the reportable segments. From the following information, what do you have to do? Identify the reportable segments. Okay, let's try and solve this. Practice question 4. It's a very simple question. Practice question 4. Put your first statement. Please write properly. First statement should be as per accounting standards 17, segment reporting. As per accounting standards 17, segment reporting. Identification of reportable segments. And then let's begin with the first one, based on segment revenue. Which are the segments that you have in the question? A, B, C, D, E. So let's write that: A, B, C, D, and E. Your external sales is 500, 190, 40, 20, and 10. So you have 500, 190, 40, 20, and 10. What's your total? 500 plus 190, 690, 690 plus 40 is 730, 730 plus 20 is 750, and 750 plus 10 is 760. Your total comes to 760. Let's take the 10% of that. How much do you get? 76. 10% of 760 comes to 76. Tell me, is segment A reportable? Is segment A reportable? That's my first question to you. Of course, yes, segment A will be reportable. Why? Because your 10% criteria is 76. However, you have 500, so definitely this is a reportable segment. Okay, what about segment B? Are separate disclosures required for segment B? What about segment B? Are separate disclosures required for segment B? Yes, of course, separate disclosures are required for segment B. Again, it satisfies the 10% criteria. So you will have separate disclosures for B. What about segment C? Are separate disclosures required for segment C? Not required. Does not satisfy the 10% criteria. What about segment D? Are separate disclosures required for segment D? No separate disclosures are required. And finally, what about segment E? Do you need separate disclosures for segment E? No separate disclosures are required. Which means your reportable segments based on revenue are which are your reportable segments based on revenue? Which are your reportable segments based on revenue? A and B. Your reportable segments based on revenue are A and B. Based on segment assets, this time you have no DTA. Sorry, based on result. Second, you have based on result. You have 50-40 segment result. 50, 40, minus 20, minus 50, minus 80. You do not need the total column over here. Let's find out segments in profit are A and B. Your total of A and B will come to 90. Your segments in loss are C, D, and E, the total of which will come to 150. So tell me, what will you take? 90 or 150? What will you take? 90 or 150? Of course, you will take 150. So we have 150 into 10%. You take whichever is higher. 150 into 10% comes to what? 15? Okay, tell me, is segment A reportable? Segment A will be reportable. What about segment B? What about segment B? Is segment B reportable? Yes, it exceeds the 10% criteria. So 10% criteria is 15. We have 40 over here. So that criteria is exceeded. Since that criteria is exceeded, segment B is reportable. What about segment C? Is segment C reportable? Yes, again it exceeds the 10% criteria. Segment C is reportable. What about the next one? Segment D. Is segment D reportable? Is segment D reportable? Yes, it exceeds the 10% criteria. Segment D is reportable. And finally, segment E. What do you say? Segment E is reportable? Is segment E reportable? Yes, of course, segment E will be reportable, which means your reportable segments based on result are A, B, C, D, and E. So your reportable segments based on segment result are A, B, C, D, and E. All segments are reportable. Let's go to the last one. Based on segment asset. Based on segment asset. Segment asset is 100, 120, 20, 30, and 5. So you have 100, 120, 20, 30, and 5. You will need the total column over here. Your total asset will be 275. You have 275 into 10%, which comes to 27.5. 275 into 10% comes to 27.5. Based on this, tell me, is segment A reportable? Is your segment A reportable? Yes, segment A will be reportable. Segment A. What about segment B? Is segment B reportable? Is segment B reportable? Of course, yes, segment B will also be reportable since it satisfies the 10% criteria. The 10% criteria wants to have 27.5, but you have 120. So, of course, this criteria is satisfied. What about segment C? Is separate disclosure required for segment C? Not required. You need 27.5, you have only 20. So separate disclosures not required. What about D? Are separate disclosures required for segment D? Are separate disclosures required for segment D? Of course, yes. Pawan, please check your answer. Separate disclosures are required for segment D. Finally, what about segment E? Are separate disclosures required for segment D? No separate disclosures are required. So your reportable segments based on a set are A, B, and D. Your reportable segments based on segment result are A, B, and D. Final answer, your reportable segments are A, B, C, D, and Now, please understand, all segments are reportable, which means additional condition need not be seen. Why? Because all segments are reportable. और जब सारे के सारे segments reportable है, तो आप किसको additional reporting दोगे? There are no segments which are left out for additional reporting. Since no segments are left out for additional reporting, no need to check the additional conditions. Just mention a note. Since all the segments are reportable, the additional conditions of AS-17 are satisfied. Right, we're done with question number 4. Are you clear with this? Please let me know so that I can proceed to the next part of the standard. Are you clear with this? Please check and let me know. Are you clear with this? If you're clear with this, then we proceed. Okay, since you're clear with this and you have no doubts, take a 10 minutes break. It is right now 9:05. I'll see you at 9:15. See you back sharp at 9:15. Take a 10 minutes break and then we continue. Right, thank you. See you in 10 minutes. And then we go to the next part of the standard. Okay, let's continue. Come to the next one, meaning of segment revenue and segment expenses. Come to the next one, page number 12, meaning of segment revenue and segment expenses. Okay, let's begin. Meaning of segment revenue and segment expenses. Segment revenue and segment expenses will include income or expense directly attributable to operating activities. So whatever operating activities are there, if your income or expense is directly attributable to your uh, operating activities, then that will be included in segment revenue and segment expense. Income and expenses out of transactions with other segments. So inter-segment incomes, inter-segment expenses, both will form part of your segment revenue and segment expense. On the other hand, what will be excluded from segment revenue and segment expense? So extraordinary items will always be excluded from segment revenue or segment expense. Any dividend earned or dividend paid, if it is other income, it will be excluded from segment revenue and segment expense. Then you have interest income and expense will also be excluded from segment revenue and segment expense. Then you have profit or loss on sale of investments, that will also be excluded. However, if you are a financing nature business, which means your segment is financing in nature, which means you give and take money on loan or you provide financial services. Now, when you provide financial services, then dividend, investment, interest income will be your regular operating activities. Because in that case, interest, dividend, and all these things will be your regular operating activities. Dividend earned, interest income, and profit or loss on sale of investments, all these three will then be included. Why? Because then they will become your activities from operating activities. Are you understanding? Then these will be considered as your operating activities. Because they will be considered as your operating activities, in this case you will be including them as segment revenue and segment expense. Are you understanding? Okay, let's go to the next part. You will always exclude income tax expenses. You will always exclude general administrative expenses. You will exclude the head office expenses and any other non-operating items. So any other non-operating items will also be excluded when you calculate segment revenue and segment expense. Right? Simple points are there. Remember only two important things. What will you include? You will include income or expense from operating activities that are directly attributable, and income and expense from transactions with other segments. Right? If you're done with this, then you have what is segment result. So we have understood what is segment revenue. We have understood what is segment expense. The difference between segment revenue and segment expense, I repeat, the difference between segment revenue and segment expense will be known as your segment result. So segment result will be segment revenue minus your segment expenses. Are you getting it? Fine, let's go to the next one. After segment income and expense, let's understand what is included in segment assets and segment liabilities. Inclusions. What will you include in segment assets? All assets and liabilities arising directly out of operating expenses will be included in segment assets. So all your activities which are directly attributable to operating activities will be included. What will be excluded? Your investments will be excluded. Your borrowings will be excluded. They will not be a part of your segment liability. Corporate building will not be a part of your segment asset. DTA, DTL, of course, you know, we have already been deducting DTA, DTL while we calculate the 10% criteria. So DTA, DTL will also be excluded. and any other non-operating assets or liabilities should also be excluded. So only operating assets and liabilities should be included. Any kind of non-operating asset or liability should be excluded when you calculate the segment assets and the segment liability. Are you understanding? Right, I hope that is clear. Now let's do a study material question. You have study material question on page number 3.144, illustration number 1. Let's solve this question. It says particulars. You have MNOPQR. What's your segment revenue? For M it is 300, for N 620, for O you have 80, for P you have 60, Q 80, and again R is 60. Segment result, you have a profit of 50 for M, loss of 190 for N. You have a profit of 10 for O, 10 for P, loss of 10 for Q, and profit of 30 for R. You also have segment assets. For M you have 40, for N you have 80, for O you have 30, for P you have 20, for Q you have 20, and for R you have 10. See what they've given in the question. The chief accountant is of the opinion that only segment M and N alone should be reported. Is this opinion justified? So looking at the question, the chief accountant says कि सिर्फ segment M और segment N को ही report करना है. They are asking you, is this opinion justified or not? Which means we need to find out which are the reportable segments, and then we will compare with the opinion of the chief accountant, and then we have to give our final opinion. Are you getting it? It is a study material question, absolutely simple question, and this question was once asked in the exam. So let's try and solve it. Illustration 1 of your study material. Study material question, page 3.144. Illustration 1. Put your first statement. As per AS-17, segment reporting. As per AS-17, segment reporting. Let's begin with segment revenue. You have segments such as M, N, O, P, Q, R. So you have over here M, N, O, P, Q, and R. The segment revenue in this case is 300, 620, 80. So you have 300, 620, 80, 60, 80, 60. You get a total of 1200. You get a total of 1200. Prepare this properly. I request you to solve the question with me. Don't think that we will solve it later. We will see to it later. We will take a screenshot of the solution. Don't do all that. Solve it along with me. That is the reason I am going a bit slow comparatively. I am going slower because I am expecting you to solve the question in your notebook along with me. Let's calculate 1200 into 10% will be how much? 120. Okay, I have one doubt before I go to this. The doubt says that why corporate building is excluded. So one corporate building is used uniformly for all the segments, because that one common corporate building is used for everyone. You cannot allocate that to one segment. So then you take it as your common asset, right? M, N, O, P, Q are all six segments are taking benefit of that corporate building, because all six segments are taking benefit. To what will you allocate? So it is better not to allocate segment wise. You take it as a total corporate building, the total office building, right? I hope that solves your doubt. Tell me, is segment M reportable? Is segment M reportable? You need your 10% criteria asks for 120, you have 300. Of course, it exceeds M, the revenue exceeds the required 120, 10% criteria. So of course, separate disclosures are required. What about segment N? Is segment N reportable? Is segment N reportable? Yes. Segment N is reportable. Okay, what about segment O? Is segment O reportable? Segment O has a revenue of 80. We need 120. So no separate disclosures are required. What about segment P? What about, what do you say about segment P? Are separate disclosures required for segment P? Is segment P reportable? Are separate disclosures required for segment P? Is segment P reportable? Look at segment P. No separate disclosures are required. You need 120, but you have only 60. What about segment Q? Is segment Q reportable? Is segment Q reportable? Not reportable. Your 10% criteria is 120. Segment Q has 80, so no disclosures required. And finally, what about segment R? Is segment R reportable? Again, not reportable. So your reportable segments based on revenue are which are your segments that are reportable based on revenue? Which are your segments which are reportable based on revenue? You have segments M and N. M and N. Do remember we are doing the institute study material question based on revenue, based on result, based on segment revenue. We have M and N. Let's go to segment result. Your segment result is 50 profit minus 190 is your loss. 10, 10 minus 10 and 30. You do not need the total over here, so we remove that. Let's find out segments in profit. You have segment M, N, sorry, not N, segment M, O, P, and R. Segment M, N, M, O, P, and R. M means 50, O means 10, comes to 60, 70, and 100. So your total is 100. Your segments in loss are N and Q. So N and Q. Total comes to 200. You will select whichever is higher. So we will select 200 into 10%, comes to 20. Based on this, tell me, is segment M reportable? You need 20. In segment M, we have 50 as our result. Is it reportable? Yes, this is reportable. What about segment N? Is segment N reportable? Is segment N reportable? Yes, you need 20. We have 190 over here. I am again repeating. You will ignore the minus sign. Be it gain or loss. Does it satisfy your 10% criteria? Yes, you will immediately report it. What about segment O? Is segment O reportable? No, not reportable. You need 20, you have 10. Separate disclosures are not required. Very good. What about P? Do you need separate disclosures for P? No separate disclosures needed. What about segment Q? What about segment Q? Separate disclosures again are not required. Finally, what about segment R? Do you need separate disclosures for segment R? Which means your reportable segment based on result are M, N, and R. Your segment results based on result are M, N, and R. M, N, and R. The segments reportable based on segment results are M, N, and R. Let's go to the next one based on segment asset. Based on segment assets. Your segment asset for M is 40, N is 80, O is 30, P is 20, Q is 20, and R is 10. So you have 20, 20, and 10. You will need the total over here. The total will come to 48 plus 30, 78, 98. 90. This is not 8. I'm sorry, this is 80. So 120, 150, 170, 190, and you have 200. Total of assets comes to 200. 200 into 10% will be 20. Tell me, is segment M reportable? Is segment M reportable? Yes, it is reportable. Is segment M reportable? Yes, you need 20, we have 40 as your assets. It is definitely reportable. Is segment N reportable? Is your segment N reportable? Segment N is also reportable. Okay, very good. Is segment O reportable? Is segment O reportable? Again, it exceeds 20. Yes, it is reportable. What about segment P? Interesting. Is segment P reportable? Yes, of course. You have 10% or more. Since this is equal to 10%, this is reportable. What about segment Q? Is segment Q reportable? Yes, of course, it is reportable. And finally, segment R. Is segment R reportable in this case? Not reportable. So no. So your segments reportable based on a set are M, N, O, P, and Q. Your reportable segments are, let's check the reportable segments. You have M and N over here, M, N, and R over here, and M, N, O, P, Q over here. So your reportable segments will be M, N, O, P, Q, and R. Your reportable segments are M, N, O, P, Q, R. You will again put that statement that since all the segments are reportable, no need to satisfy any of the additional conditions. So let's put that also. Additional conditions of AS7 are satisfied. And the most important question, look at the question, what have they asked you? In the question, they have asked you, what is the opinion of the chief correct? Tell me, is the opinion of the chief accountant correct? My question to you is, the chief accountant is of the opinion that only segment N, M and N are reportable. What do you say? Is only segment M and N reportable? No, all segments are reportable. So we will have to put that statement that therefore the chief accountant is wrong. The reportable segments are M, N, O, P, Q, M, N, O, P, Q, R. All segments are reportable. Are you understanding? All segments are reportable. Right? That brings you to the end of your illustration question. Are you clear with whatever we have done? Are you clear with AS-17, whatever we have done? Please let me know so that I can proceed ahead. Are you all clear with AS-17? Have you understood AS-17? Are there any doubts which I can address? Are you all absolutely clear with AS-17? The questions that we did today, are you clear with those questions in AS-17? Okay, great. Since you're clear with that, I think this much is sufficient for today. Tomorrow we will do a very interesting topic known as the transfer pricing policy. So transfer pricing policy and how do you deal with the same in AS-17. We will be understanding transfer pricing policy tomorrow. So please be on time. We will do the transfer pricing policy, and after that we proceed with the next very important next part of the standard, and one very important question, question number 5. Once we are done with this, tomorrow I think we should be in a position to finish off accounting standard 30. Right, please go back today and revise AS-17. I'm sorry, tomorrow we'll be in a position to finish off AS-17. Today you will revise whatever we have done in AS-17. We will begin with your doubts tomorrow. Right, and I wish you all the best for the test. Please appear as if this is your exam question paper. And of course, do solve all the questions, prepare proper formats, and give proper headings. Right, thank you so much for attending, and now I'll see you today at 3:30 for audit. Right, thank you so much, and bye.